as part of the liquidation, they are probably going to strike some deal of sending these things back. And I'm guessing that Gibson has been extending them credit for probably quite some time. Are you tired of watching hours of confusing videos by guitar music theory experts on YouTube and still not understanding a darn thing they're on about? Then you need the Songwriting Inspiration app. For only $5, you can organize 6,000 guitar chords into relative major and minor keys and get tons of fresh new ideas for more sophisticated chord progressions and songs. Downloading Song is like downloading music theory straight into your brain. Link is in the description.
Shit post? I don't know.
Yeah. How's it going, dudes and dudettes? Brad the Guitarologist here. This is going to be probably, I guess you could call this a bit of a shitpost Friday slight return. And the only reason I'm doing this is because obviously we've had some developments recently in the ongoing saga and story of Guitar Center. The New York Times and other publications have come out with some Guitar Center related articles. You can read, similar stuff in a lot of other places. Also, Bloomberg had a good article on this. Basically, talking about how Guitar Center is now mulling a restructuring with creditors, possibly taking control of the company. So this is something that we've seen before in the past couple of years with the whole Gibson ordeal, where they had a big ton of debt to an investment firm, KKR, and they weren't able to repay the debt, so KKR comes in during the bankruptcy process and essentially takes over the company. I don't know if KKR is going to hold on to the company in perpetuity, or if they're just doing it, long enough to get their debt paid down and then they're going to sell it, or what they're going to end up doing with that company. But Guitar Center is another deal altogether. But that kind of brings us full circle back with Gibson as well, because a lot of the Gibson success is tied to the success or failure of Guitar Center. So those two things are pretty much going to be intimately linked, and we're going to go into this and kind of unpack some of this. But this article in Bloomberg talks about Guitar Center, the largest musical instrument retailer in the U.S., is considering options, including bankruptcy, to manage its debt load after it skipped bond interest payments this month. And the size of the payment was supposed to be $45 million that they had skipped. And apparently that's not the only payment that they've skipped. They've been skipping payments to some of the other creditors, namely the people who have product in their stores. Even Philip McKnight pointed this out in one of his recent Q&A live shows.
One of them was, I want to talk about Guitar Center. I went to Guitar Center this week. There you go. This is my Guitar Center by my house. There's no guitars. It looks like a wasteland. And the used section is empty of almost all guitars.
They don't have a lot of products on the walls, apparently, in a lot of these locations. And, and frankly, we talked about this a while back as well. I've been reporting on Guitar Center news for several years now. In fact, I thought in 2018 they were going to go bankrupt and wouldn't survive the end of that year. But I was wrong. But here we are. Late 2020, and it looks like Guitar Center is finally on its last legs. It's going to enter probably a Chapter 11, I'm guessing, bankruptcy, where they figure out, what debts they can repay, which ones they can, and probably figure out the future of the company with, like Bloomberg reported, creditors possibly taking over. But let's read a little bit more of this one. The chain is in active talks with its creditors about restructuring its debts, which could see certain holders take control of the company, according to people with knowledge of the situation. Usually when something like that happens, it's the creditors with the most debt in Guitar Center or a company like this that end up taking control of the company, ostensibly to recoup all the money that they've lost. Some of the smaller creditors, you're probably not going to see a damn thing. And unfortunately, that's going to be a lot of guitar-related companies. Now, some of this stuff might end up being sent back to the companies in lieu of payments. In all likelihood, what has ended up happening to all that stuff is it's been sold, and that money, whatever money is there, is going to be paying off the big boys and these small time companies who have their product in Guitar Center on credit. You're just going to be SOL. Rickenbacker recently, back in August, announced they have stopped accepting orders from Guitar Center and Musician's Friend, and it's not just Rickenbacker; it's a lot of other companies as well. This according to insiders. according to people that I know. Also, according to Phil McKnight, he talked about it a little bit later in that same podcast. If you want to look at the links to all this stuff, I will post links in the description, including to Phil's podcast where he showed the Guitar Center walls basically bare. But this one, this news says Rickenbacker Guitar stops accepting orders from Guitar Center and Musician's Friend. Musician's Friend, of course, is tied inextricably to Guitar Center. One owns the other. Rickenbacker has announced that it no longer is accepting orders from Guitar Center or its sister brand Musician's Friend at this time. It made the announcement in a post on social media. Rickenbacker also urged customers to reach out to any other authorized Rickenbacker dealer. And you can see here already some of these manufacturers are pointing to the alternative dealers instead of Guitar Center. Now, the problem with some companies, such as Gibson Guitars, for instance, they have so shrunk down over the years the number of dealers that are actually in their dealer network. And this is why this is specifically going to affect Gibson Guitars negatively. They have so shrunk down the number of dealers that are allowed in their network. And most of it is due to the absurd amount of stuff that you have to buy in order to become a Gibson dealer and maintain a Gibson dealership. And some of the absurd, models that you end up having to buy, and you have to keep so many of this, so many of that. And a lot of the stuff that just simply doesn't sell as well, you have to buy it anyway and keep it in stock. And a lot of dealers aren't capable of spending, $2-3 million to have just Gibson stuff in stock. So that's a big deal. And Gibson has essentially shot itself in the foot over the past couple of decades and tied itself so inextricably to Guitar Center and its fate that I have fears even that Gibson could be pulled back into a sort of bankruptcy situation, or that KKR will be forced to, downsize, will be forced to make other arrangements to try to keep Gibson afloat. But it looks to me as if at least something is going to have to be done by Gibson in order to kind of mitigate the losses of sales that it's going to feel inevitably from Guitar Center going under, a Musician's Friend also. And, one has to wonder what this says about the future of the guitar market as a whole. Now, I'm optimistic because personally, I believe that Guitar Center is like the Walmart of guitar stores. If you were to remove Walmart, for instance, from, every small town around America, for instance, those little mom and pop shops that were put out of business long ago by Walmart might slowly start to spring back to life. And maybe you could see something like that start to happen with guitar stores. Now, you're going to have a lot of employees of Guitar Centers, at least the competent ones, the ones who had saved some money, the ones with a lot of knowledge. And if that's all they've ever known, through their working life is working in guitar stores, they're probably going to want to continue that trend. So I would imagine a lot of those will start, their own guitar stores in those communities where they've been put out of work. Moody's recently, this year, I say recently, but throughout this year has been downgrading Guitar Center over and over again. I think the last time I reported on this, they had been downgraded to CAA2, which is a really negative outlook, and it's basically in junk bond territory. But that was back in February, and since then, obviously a lot has happened. This is something that I followed for so long. It's so tied to the fate of guitarists and the guitar industry in general that it really bears being reported on. I know a lot of other people are doing the same thing, so it feels like I'm jumping on the bandwagon, but I think I have some perspective that others may not as well. So starting in February, we noticed that we had a downgrade to CAA2. That was after the previous downgrade back in April of 2019. So we've had a rapid series of downgrades by Moody's. I had another downgrade to CAA3 in April of this year. And then we had the latest downgrade, which goes from CAA3 down to CA. And CA, if we look at the Moody's ratings right here, we have B, BA2, BA3. And it wasn't that long ago. They were up at B3, which is still, speculative and high risk even there. But they've been downgraded 1, 2, 3, 4 times since then, just within the span of about a year and a half. And they are currently sitting at CA, which is judged to be highly speculative and with the likelihood of near or in default, but some possibility of recovering principal and interest. So, somebody might basically swoop in and be able to recoup some of their investment, but in all likelihood, this company is headed very, very, very quickly to C rating, which is the lowest possible quality rating for a bond, which is usually means you're going to be in default and you're not going to recover any principal or interest if you were to invest in this company. So that's where they're sitting right now. We already discussed Rickenbacker stopping accepting orders, but also it was reported back in June about Fulltone. This was interesting. It was reported by Guitar Center that they were going to pull Fulltone products from their stores and websites. So he made some controversial statements, but what he said specifically was, what is this like? Night 4 of looting with 100% impunity, and the pussy mayor and governor don't give a shit about small businesses, and it's never been more clear. And I concur with him on that, and I think reasonable people of all stripes should be able to concur that if you let people run riot, you're going to get more of it. If you release people who are smashing shit and looting stores and don't care about small business owners, you're just going to get more of the same. I think that's what Mike was saying. Mike Fuller, the owner of Fulltone, was saying with that statement. But Guitar Center pretends back, what was this, in June, that they, in response to this egregious thing that he said, they're going to pull his pedals from the store. But it turned out that wasn't at all what was going on. What was actually going on was he had already terminated Guitar Center's dealership months before, and Guitar Center was just basically trying to cover its ass and blame him for it, and blame it on his statements, his awful, unwoke statements, as their reasoning for pulling his products from the stores, when actually it was the reverse. So you could see how, they were trying to cover their asses there. There was a bit of I guess, kind of political gamesmanship going on. But here you could see, they're running a lot of save up to $1,000 on a slew of Gibson Les Paul. So they're doing, and this is 14 days ago. So they're trying to move out probably the last of their Gibson inventory. And I would say some of this stuff, because they're actually advertising some of these prices now that to me would probably violate the Gibson map pricing unless they had some kind of special deal going that I'm just not privy to. They're actually publishing prices that are below the Gibson map pricing, which is in violation technically of Gibson's agreements that I would suspect that they have. So you can see right here, was $27.99, now $23.99, was $18.99, now $15.99. So they're discounting all this stuff that they have remaining in stock, and that just tells me, they see the writing on the wall, and they're trying to move this stuff out. Here we have a 58 aged Les Paul, $57.99 is now $47.99. So this is their last gasp of trying to move this stuff before inevitably they're going to end up having to give all this product probably back to Gibson anyway. And then what's going to happen when that happens? When Gibson receives back all of these unsold guitars that are sitting in Guitar Center warehouses or hanging up on Guitar Center walls that have scratches, dents, or whatever, and the shipping to and from, and also from sitting inside a store for God knows how long unsold. And as part of the liquidation, they are probably going to strike some deal of sending these things back. And I'm guessing that Gibson has been extending them credit for probably quite some time in the hopes of turning things around and continuing this relationship. But, I'm not privy to the actual deal that Gibson has, so I can't speak to that. But my guess is that Gibson probably lets Guitar Center get away with having a lot of stuff in stock that they didn't pay up front for. And so they carry a lot of credit, from Gibson. So my guess is that's what they're trying to do here with these Gibson blowouts, liquidate all of it, and try to get some cash on hand very quickly so they can make some bill payments or I say bill payments, but probably all these payments are going to end up going to their biggest creditors in the end anyway. But just interesting stuff. And this coming on the heels back in March, we learned about Heritage Guitars were suing over a trademark issue that goes back to, basically the 80s when Heritage began, and Gibson and them had a tentative agreement that Heritage could continue making guitars in this manner. And this was all litigated in the early 90s, but Gibson had actually started sending them threatening letters saying they were going to sue them. And so this is this is them trying to get out in front of this. Heritage was suing them first. Basically, I'll sue you before you sue me kind of thing. I reported also back in May that Guitar Center was being sued by one of the landlords for the local Guitar Center here in the shopping center that they're located in. And they basically had not paid their rent since COVID had begun. And I talked to the manager of the store at that particular time.
We're opening back up, man. I think the biggest affected thing is our lessons business. We're going to have to keep doing video lessons because those rooms that we have aren't CDC guidelines. But
right.
When we do open, it's going to be a whole new world. It's going to be staff health and well-being first and foremost. So if you want to come shop at Guitar Center, you're going to wear a mask. Demo time's going to be limited. It's going to be some tough stuff that, it's not. We've never had to operate like that before, but we're going to keep everybody safe.
Okay, so they're, obviously their focus, like everybody else, was all freaking out over the virus and saying you have to wear masks to come in. You're going to have to limit your demo time on guitars and amps and all this stuff. Some stores I'd heard in some locations even completely eliminated demos, so you couldn't plug into anything. So, and they would only let you in the store if you were going directly to the item that you wanted to get and then right back out, or they would even bring you the item at the door, I think, in some locations too. So just an absolute mess and just an overcorrection, from the hysteria that this whole virus thing has brought on. The numbers just don't hold up, but that's a whole other discussion. We can have that discussion some other time, but that's one of the reasons I've also discontinued Shitpost Fridays, is because you guys, a lot of you at least, don't seem to want to have these sorts of discussions. You don't want to have frank discussions, so fuck it. We won't have frank discussions. But here, for one last go around, we'll talk about Guitar Center, because this is the culmination of a lot of reporting, of years, in fact, of reporting on this channel about Guitar Center and about their imminent default and what's going to end up happening when they do default, because this may end up being either a great thing for the guitar industry or it could be a bad thing. I think it does signal a general contraction that's coming in the guitar market and a move away from the old school way in which people bought guitars, which was brick and mortar, toward more online. I think today's generation, I think they're getting a lot of their buying directions from YouTube, from influencers online and on multiple platforms. And so, you see all these gear demos, and you see all these things. This is where all those views are coming from for videos like that. It's coming from people who are thinking about buying things a lot of the time, and this is where they're getting their buying decisions from. They're not walking into a store like they used to and asking the clerk there, hey, what's the best thing at this price level that plays good that you think I can learn on? They're not getting their buying directions like that anymore. It's more like they'll go to YouTube, they'll watch a few videos, few different ones with different suggestions, and then they'll make decisions based on that and based on the pricing that they're seeing on online retailers. So it's a completely different buying public, really, and it's just a completely different way of doing business that Guitar Center, frankly, never really caught up to and never really was able to get its foot in the door on it properly. I don't think they really kept up with their website very well. Even their used stuff wasn't put up there as consistently as it could have been. And the stuff that was put up there was often, poorly photographed with really bad light. You would have just one picture of the whole, you couldn't see anything. And it's just a real pain in the ass to try to buy anything from Guitar Center online. And Musician's Friend, wasn't a lot better. You've got a lot of other options now, like you have reverb.com, you have eBay, where you could go and see usually a lot more pictures of things. And, lots of smaller stores have their own online shopping experience too. So there's a lot of competition for a smaller and smaller pie. So, I think guitars are obviously going to continue. I don't think it's the end of the guitar as a musical instrument, or something that people want to play or aspire to play. But I do think that, we're seeing the pains of growth that come from just, changes happening in the wider world. And Guitar Center going under is just one of those necessary changes that's probably going to have to happen. I would say in this case, probably very much like what happened with Jeffrey the Giraffe, Toys R Us, that Guitar Center is probably going to go that way. They don't have really much in the way of assets. It's not like Gibson. With Gibson guitars, they had the asset of the Gibson name. They had the asset of some of the Gibson trademarks and some of the inventions and things like this that the creditors could try to exploit, and they are trying to exploit until they realize, you know, that all these court cases are going to end up knocking them all down, and that's a shrinking pie as well. So there's less and less reason to own Gibson if you don't own some of the trademarks that the Gibson models are based upon. But in the case of Guitar Center, I think actually owes more money than it's even worth in terms of assets. So at this point, so it's just one of those things where there's not a whole lot there except for the name Guitar Center. You could very easily come up with another name. I don't know, Guitar Shack or Guitar that whatever. And actually, you know, frankly, Guitar Center really doesn't sum up what they do very well anyway, because a lot of their sales, I'm sure, you know, are recording stuff, keyboard stuff. They do lessons. They do a lot of things other than just guitar sales. So, you know, I'm not sure that really summarizes what it is. That maybe there's a better name anyway. Maybe it's just Music Center USA, Music Center, whatever, World Music Center, something like that. Might even be, or Musician's Friend. Maybe they could just use the Musician's Friend brand and make it the store, you know, location thing. Who knows? But that would make more sense to me anyway, but just to consolidate, because why would you have two different brands under the same roof that basically sell all the same shit, but then you have to spend twice as much in marketing to get both of those brands out there? Why would you do that? I've never really understood that, why they didn't consolidate and just either make the store Guitar Center or make the whole thing Musician's Friend. Either way, it doesn't make any sense. Just from a marketing standpoint and a budgeting standpoint, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, that is the news on Guitar Center. Like I said, I don't know where we go from here as far as guitars. I think guitars are going to go on. I think this is actually going to be a renaissance in small mom and pop shops. I think this is a really, really good thing for small mom and pop shops. It's going to be a bad thing for Guitar Center employees. But frankly, if you've hitched your wagon to something that people have been saying for the last, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years that is going to eventually go under, the writing's been on the wall for quite a while. It's kind of, it's not a surprise, put it that way. I think I've been saying for a while, if you work at a Guitar Center, you should really hedge your bets. It's all right to work there part-time, but I wouldn't try to make it my career, or try to climb the corporate ladder, because I'm not even sure that ladder is going to be there in another year. And here we are, October 2020, entering November 2020, and it looks like Guitar Center is going to have to liquidate and have to enter bankruptcy, and may not come out of bankruptcy. So we'll see. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, hit subscribe down below. And for now, we will see y'all later.